Hey guys, Philosopher here, and today we're talking about Teal gear. This is the new level of gear that's being introduced. It's coming live in the next patch that will come, I think probably on Wednesday based on the emails we've been getting in the game. And we just got some guidance that talks to us about how this gear is going to be released, and I think it really... I think it gives us a fairly clear picture of what we can expect here. It's not all that different from what we've seen in the past, and so as somebody who is dealing with this for Gear Tier 15 when Dark Dimension 4 was going out and I was trying to race, I want to kind of talk to you about what this will look like based on what we know so far. So obviously, I'm basing this on what Scopely tells us. Be careful about making investments or making any spur of the moment decisions here until it actually is live in game, because sometimes the stuff that happens in the game does not match their guidance. But based upon what they're telling us, is that one thing that they confirm here is that the Doom 2 raid is going to be the primary source of Teal gear. And this is actually slightly different from what they said in the past. In the past, they said it would be a primary source. In other words, one of the primary sources. Here, they made clear that the primary source is going to be Doom 2. The other sources are going to be your wallet, right? Your credit card, the war store, and that's a big one. In the supply store, as well as they say event milestones, whatever. So this is just going to be, they're going to give you a little bit for free, right? But it's not going to be nearly enough. Maybe you'll bring up one character or something with that. But the supply store and the war store, this is very familiar to me as somebody who is racing in DD4 and struggling to get characters to Gear Tier 15 early on for that. They were very, very, very tight with those Gear 15 mini uniques in the beginning. So what does this mean? So first of all, this is going to be a little bit different, because before what happened, we already had orange in the game, so you could already get sort of the basic parts of orange gear, and that was easy to get from a variety of sources previously. Before, let's say for DD4, but the bottleneck was entirely the mini uniques. Well, now there's two bottlenecks. So on one hand, if you're not raiding in Doom 2, you're basically not getting anywhere with your gear, because you can go to the supply store, in other words, purchase for gold, or the war store. You can get the new basic catalysts and the origin gear and everything else that way. But the amount of gold, I'll just tell you right now, the amount of gold you're going to have to spend, and cores and war store currency to get the regular gear is going to be so high, you're never going to be able to get anywhere for any reasonable amount of money. Okay, even a crazy amount of money. In fact, it's going to be a crazy mad dash, even if you are raiding Doom 2. So, as a baseline, the efficient way of getting Teal gear is going to be through the Doom 2 raid. But that's just bottleneck 1. So you're going to have to progress here, and as we learned recently, I just had a video that came out recently explaining how to get ready for Doom 2. There's going to be different difficulty levels there, and you're going to want to work your way up that ladder, trying to get as far as you can in terms of difficulty level and completion percentage to get more Teal gear. But once you get past that bottleneck, you're still going to have to deal with the mini uniques, which are not they are excluded from the orb. So all the various parts of the Teal gear will be in the raid orb, except for the mini uniques. So how do you get these? Well, they're basically a couple ways, three ways. One of which they don't mention here, which is they don't explicitly mention here, they just allude to earlier, is money, right? So obviously there's going to be the people wailing out, but I will just tell you that even then, they're almost certainly going to make it very tight. In other words, for DD4, when I was racing for DD4, you couldn't buy enough mini uniques to get anywhere there. In other words, you could buy a little bit from an offer. They'd have an offer once every, couple weeks for, a small number of mini uniques, but they're not even going to let you buy a lot of them. Sort of like how, for example, right now you really can't buy blue ISO ordinarily, right? even if you wanted to spend a fortune on Blue ISO, you couldn't do it. Well, it's going to be like that for Teal mini uniques at first. I would be very surprised if it's not that way. So what you're going to have to do if you want to get those mini uniques is you're going to have to use what it says here, the supply store or the war store. So what does this mean? Well, the supply store, so the war store is going to be your best bet, because there's going to have, so basic catalysts will be one slot. You're not going to want to buy those because you're going to get those from rating. Okay, the people who buy those with their war store currency it's going to take them forever to get a character up, because you just aren't going to have enough currency if you're going to have to buy every ABC, with your war store currency. But the mini uniques will appear in the remaining slots. So there's one row. So let's go to this now. I want to show you what they're talking about. So if you go here, what they're saying is, you see that we got, all these rows of orange. 1, 2, 3 rows of orange. 1 row, 2 rows of purple here. 3 rows of purple. They're going to have 1 row of teal. 1 row. And that row is going to have 1 that's going to be the ABC. So this catalyst, which you're probably not going to want to buy. Then there's going to be 2 here, which are going to have mini uniques randomly showing up, but also all the other pieces. Things like the origin gear, like the papers here. Things like these other types of catalysts, the focus catalysts or damage catalysts. So that's total RNG. So here's the problem. How are you going to get enough mini uniques to bring up a character? You are going to be refreshing with cores. This is how they make their money. You refresh with cores. And you've got the same thing here in the supply store. So they're saying, okay, there will be 1 row in the supply store, literally 1 row. Well, one of them will be this. So you're going to have 2 spots, and you're going to have a random chance of getting mini uniques, and they're not necessarily going to be the mini uniques you need. You're just going to end up buying them all at first, and it's going to be complete RNG fest. And you can refresh up as much as you want. Now, last time for GD4, I was competing against these people who had much larger accounts than I did, and I didn't have as much war store currency. I had saved up as much as I possibly could at the time, but the war store currency was the best way to get it at the time, because the war store currency had a dedicated spot for a mini unique. They've taken that out this time. So there used to be, for GD5, there was this spot here. For GD4, when I was racing in GD4, there was this spot that you could always buy mini uniques. It wasn't 4 at the time. I think it was just 1. They increased this over time. 1 or 2, maybe it was 2. But in any event, you could buy these. And so every time you refresh, you could buy a mini unique as long as you had enough war store currency. But if you ran out of war store currency, all you could do is just refresh here, and the chances of getting a mini unique were pretty low. So here, they're basically turning both of them into an RNG fest to get a lot of cores. That's how they're going to make their money here. And I will just tell you what did I do to try to prepare as somebody who's planning to race for GD5 again? I've been saving up war store currency like crazy. I haven't spent any war store currency since GD4. So for almost a year. And I bought the offers that had the war store currency, and I've just been sitting on my war store currency. And I did that just to race, to try to be first for GD5 or whatever. So I got 1.1 million. But the problem is now I won't even be able to spend it, because I'm going to have to refresh like crazy. And last time, my competitors were refreshing up to like the point where this was like 1,600 cores, 3,200 cores per refresh. I'm not going to do anything that crazy. So I may end up in 4th again. It is what it is. But the point is, that the point is that this is going to be how they're going to make their money. This is going to be the bottleneck. It's how it's going to work. So what does this mean for you? Well, what this means, if you're not one of those few people racing, if you're just trying to get your teal gear, is you've got to decide for yourself, do I want to spend any cores refreshing? A lot of people are going to be like, no. Particularly if you're free to play, or you're a minnow sort of player, guppy, dolphin, whatever, you're going to want to spend your money on refreshing energy, energy refreshes or whatever you spend your cores on, not on this stuff. And if that's the case, you should just buy every single mini unique you get. And I think you get your hands on if you're trying to get Teal gear right away. Now, if you're not in doing Doom raid, a 2 raid, if you're not a kind of end game player, then you can hold off on that. But I just think certainly everybody should be buying the mini uniques that show up in the supplies section for gold. If you're anywhere, let's say if you're done with DD4, I think you should start doing that once they show up. And then for this, it really depends on where you're at. If you use your War Store currency for character shards, then that's your primary focus. If you're, let's say, free to play and these are a real bottleneck for you, these shards, and then that's that. If you already have everything at 7 stars or the star levels you need at the very least, and you've got a bunch of extra War Store currency, I would consider getting those mini uniques, because that is really what this War Store currency is best used for. Either early on when there's a gear tier, getting the mini uniques so you can be one of the first people to get your characters up to that gear tier, or using it for those rare character shards. Those are really, I think, the two purposes for it. Now, there are some other interesting details here, and one of them is, that there's going to be a lot less gear needed. I think that's a good thing, because frankly, it was getting kind of absurd. So that's why they said that was one reason why they went to Teal, is that they was already taking over 1,000 SBCs to get to gear tier 15, and then if they scaled up to gear tier 16, it was going to be an absurd amount, and they didn't want to do that. And then they say, oh yeah, we're going to make Orange Gear Super available, and so they're decreasing prices. And I got to say, this was disappointing to me in a sense, because the price decreases are not, in my opinion, as substantial as they could be. But hopefully they reduce them more in the future. This is disappointing, because I think this is supposed to be a way for folks to catch up. So it's going to take some time. But, for example here, Orange Uniques, they're still going to cost you, this is the G13 Uniques, still going to cost 900 war credits. G14 Mini Uniques, still now they're 300. That's a better reduction. I will say, overall, I think, they're definitely trying to make it so newer players can zip through the first few Dark Dimensions, get to DD4, and get to the point where they hit Doom Raid, and start going there. They're going to get a lot of free orange gear out of the DD2, DD3, DD4. But I have to say, there's definitely going to be a new hard wall or glass ceiling for those players, and that is going to come in the form of DD5 and the Doom Raids and so forth. You're going to have to work your way. You're not going to be able to skip. Like, people now just skip right to Ultima 7 sometimes. They'll go to an alliance that can carry them in Ultima 6 or 7. There's not going to be any skipping here. You're going to have to do Doom Raid 1 to get the blue ISO, to get to Doom Raid 2. You're going to have to go in Doom Raid 2 and get your Teal gear that way. And you're going to have to be focusing enough on war, or at least or saving up your war credits to get these mini uniques if you want to have gear tier 16 anytime soon. Of course, the other option for you is just to wait until they loosen this up in the coming months, and you'll just sort of be further behind the curve. But of course, that also makes it harder for your characters to do well in Doom 2. All right, guys, if you like this video, smash that like button. Subscribe to this channel. If you have comments or questions, you can leave them below, or just go to my Discord. That's linked below as well. You can also go to my Twitch stream. That is linked below. That's where I make these videos.